Hello, and welcome back to It's Always Sunny in Hollywood. And today, we're talking about a film directed by the master of suspense. So intense, no defense. Hitchcock when he presents. Also known as Alfred Hitchcock. My name is Patrick.
Well, gosh golly, I'm Red Drum Arts.
And I'm Lugia. And stop looking at me through the window, you perv.
Oh, but there's been a murder.
Close your
There's been
blinds.
a murder in your house. Oh golly,
Yes, today
Steve
is
Wilkers.
it's Hitchcock time. But before we Hitchcock all over the place, let's just take a brief minute because a Nintendo Direct happened this week. I'll be real, not too many announcements stood out to me. It was mainly focused on third parties, but there was one announcement that caught me by surprise, and that is there's going to be an Epic Mickey remake. And I'm particularly curious what Lugia has to say about this, because I know you've played through at least the first one.
No, I've played through the second game.
I thought you
I
played through the
played
first one.
I
No, I
played a little
didn't.
bit of the first one at a friend's
Huh.
place once. I liked it. I liked what I played of Epic Mickey.
I
You
It's kind
never
of
haven't.
actually
funny how
beat the second one, did you?
I did. I beat it a couple
You
times
did?
with my brother. Like, we would always spend time on the
Really?
multiplayer in that game. And I remember it being fun, but it's also been so many years since I last touched it.
it's no
I
Kingdom
guess
Hearts, but
because
it's a fun game.
I guess because you played the second one, I just assumed you played the first.
No.
My apologies.
it's,
Um,
it's
but
fine.
even so, you have any
Like,
thoughts about this?
it deserves a remake as much as like say Battle for Bikini Bottom does. You know, it's a solid game. It
Which
used some
is
solid.
funny because it's the same developer, Purple Lamp.
Oh, well, I hope they do a slightly better job with Battle for Bikini Bottom because that remake had some issues in my opinion. But we'll
I
see.
have played through the remake, which I believe you gave me as a Christmas gift.
I think I did, yeah.
Yes, thank you for that. I liked it, but yeah, it had some pretty annoying quirks. And it's
Why can't they
Battle
make
for
shit
Bikini
quirky?
Bottom Rehydrated is the only game I ever played on Switch that crashed on me.
Oh, I didn't
It
know if it
happened a
was.
few times, which okay.
And you played the original too, back on the PS2,
I
right?
have played the original, yes. Granted, that was it was through backwards compatibility on the Xbox 360, so that too had its quirks, but it's one thing to have like some visual glitches. In this case, the game just stopped.
Alright, I have a question relating to the remake.
Yeah,
Is Mr. Krabs' dream still a nightmare?
yeah, very much.
Okay.
Now that reminds me, since you're talking about the Nintendo Direct, there was a little bit of controversy with the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection that was announced because it's a PlayStation 2 game, but for some reason it's gonna be like it has like a massive like increase in how do I put this the file size is like significantly larger. It went from like a 2 gigabyte game to like 25 or like 50 gigabytes, and people are like, "What the hell did they do?"
Hmm.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. Also, Switch Online has Battletoads now, so if you want to play Battletoads,
I think I saw that they only had the Super Nintendo version of Battletoads and not the NES one.
which is interesting because I never played the Super Nintendo version, so I might check it out.
Yeah, but like
Oh,
when you think Battletoads, everyone always talks about the NES version because it's one of, if not the hardest game ever made.
I actually got past the motorbike level, and it's pretty fun. But then you have another motorbike level, and then there's this race level with the mouse. That's the most bullshit thing I've ever played in my life. Honestly, I think I hate the race with the mouse more than the motorbike levels because
Yeah,
at
I've
least like the
heard that
motorbike
one is
level.
really bad. And if you play in
Hmm.
multiplayer, the I think the very next level is literally unwinnable.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
Because like here's the thing, the
That is
motorbike level,
BS.
the motorbike level is bullshit, but at least like it's fair. Like it's not like fair is like in quotes. So like if you memorize the pattern, you can get through it.
It's also like the third level of the game, so it's pretty early on, right?
I mean, they have multiple motorbike levels.
I mean, the first one at least, like
There
the
are
infamous
warp
Yeah.
one.
zones too in Battletoads. Is that one of the skippable levels?
I don't think so. Because if it was skippable, I don't think it would be as infamous as it was. I think some of the later ones are skippable, but not the first one. But like the thing with the mouse is that like the race with the rat or whatever is he like glitches through the thing. So you actually have to time it like really carefully, like make because like it's the most insane like bullshit where like you can be ahead and still like lose just because he glitches through like the floor, and it's like, God damn it! It's not like a glitch through the floor. Like they intentionally let him clip through the floor, but it's some bullshit.
It's like rubber
Can't go
banding,
too,
but far too
yeah,
extreme.
yeah. Like you can't go too fast. Like you have to hit this like perfect little gray zone in terms of being ahead of it. It's annoying. Anyway, speaking of game remakes, they're remaking that N64 South Park game. It's called South Park Snow Day. Now it's gonna be a
It's
3D
not a
co-op.
remake. That's not a remake. It's a brand new game.
It's a brand new game, but like it plays and looks exactly like the N64 game. So like I think it's a remake, but they just don't want to call it a remake because the original game wasn't well received. Also, Mother 3 is out on Switch Online, but only for Japanese players. America gets nothing. Fuck you, America.
That's still like the biggest troll. I mean, I kind of understand why Mother 3 isn't being localized, especially with some of the content in the game. Like, I feel like Westerners are gonna burn it to the ground. Well, actually,
Mhm.
have you guys ever played the game?
I
I
played
know
part of it. I haven't
nothing
played
about
it.
Mother/Earthbound.
I've played
Okay.
the original Earthbound and I've played part of Mother 3.
So I think if they were to try to bring it over to the West, which they probably aren't, they're gonna have to change a lot about the game with some of its characters and its storytelling because Mother 3 is a really dark game, and you wouldn't think so, like looking at it from the surface. Also, there's apparently Mother 3 merchandise also being sold in Japan, and that also kind of hurts, but all right.
Anyway, I guess one more bit of news is that apparently Shane Gillis hosted SNL last night. I actually saw a little bit of it. It was decent. But the reason like that's significant is because Shane Gillis was actually hired by SNL, and before he could ever show up on the show, he got fired because he made a joke on a podcast that was considered offensive. And this was back in like the late 2010s where like people were a lot more like strict on that. Like now before and after that people kind of loosened up and no one cares, but like during that time period, edgy jokes for some reason was very controversial. So yeah, a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's kind of funny that like he got fired, but because he was funny and like Louis C.K. and Dave Chappelle and other like comedy legends and Norm Macdonald were all like, this kid's good, his career ended up like being really good. So now he's hosting the show that he was fired from, and I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. Anyway, Rear Window.
It's Hitchcock in time. So, Rear Window was directed by Alfred Hitchcock, stars Jimmy Stewart, Grace Kelly, Wendell Corey, Thelma Ritter, and Raymond Burr. It is based on the short story It Had to Be Murder by Cornell Woolrich. And in terms of production history, this film was shot on quite an elaborate set conducted in the Paramount Studios lot. Filming took around 2 months, actually less than 2 months, and the set was 98 feet wide, 185 feet long, 40 feet high, with 31 apartments, 13 of which were fully furnished, some of which even had electricity and running water. And what's interesting is that Alfred Hitchcock directed the entire movie from the base apartment, which is Jeff's apartment. All the other actors received their directions through earpieces, which were flesh colored, so you couldn't see it on camera. And some other fun facts is that Jimmy Stewart's co-star, Grace Kelly, at the time there was a rumor that she would have affairs with all of her male co-stars. And Jimmy Stewart's wife, Gloria, heard about this and decided to prevent this from happening. She would sit in on production every single day to make sure the two weren't smitten.
I mean, this is a movie about peeping.
And another fun fact is that the piano player in the movie, he's an actual like real piano player and composer, and his name is Ross Bagdasarian. And 4 years after Rear Window, he would create Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Oh, he would.
Huh.
Yep, how about that? Alfred Hitchcock is somehow tied to Alvin and the Chipmunks by a degree of separation. The more you know,
Huh.
huh?
Yeah.
Is
I
he
don't
at
know how
all
to react to
responsible for
that.
the live action movies?
I highly doubt that.
It'd be really funny if they filmed the live action movies like
Wait,
a Hitchcock
Alfred
film.
Hitchcock or Ross?
Both. Are they're partly responsible.
I think
I
it would
don't
be
know.
funny. I think it would be funny if the live action Alvin and the Chipmunks movie was shot like a Hitchcock film.
I don't even know if Ross is still alive anymore.
He's not.
Okay, so I doubt either
He passed
Hitchcock or
away.
him
He
had
passed
any
away in
involvement.
19. He passed away in 1972 at age 52. So he
Okay,
died
so yeah,
really
like
young.
way before the live action movies. Anyway, Rear Window released in September 1954, where it received critical acclaim, and against a budget of just $1 million, it made 37 million. Not bad, not bad. And it garnered 4 Oscar nominations, being Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography for a Film in Color, and Best Sound Recording. And though it failed to win any of its nominations, today Rear Window is regarded as one of the all time greats, and in 1997 it was inducted into the National Film Registry. So, quick question, what is your guys' experience with Hitchcock?
Psycho.
I've seen a bunch of his movies, man. In fact, the first Hitchcock movie I ever saw was Rear Window, because for some reason my dad, when I was in elementary school, my dad was like, "I should show this kid this movie," and I actually really liked it. It was one of my favorite movies, and for years I didn't actually know who directed it or like what the name was. I was just like, "Man, that's a good movie. I need to figure it out." But yeah, I've seen like 6 of Hitchcock's movies, so I've seen Rear Window, Psycho, The 39 Steps, North by Northwest, Frenzy, and Vertigo.
This was actually my first rodeo with Hitchcock. I told you guys last time, but Rear Window is a movie I got as a gift many years ago, and I saw like the first 30 minutes of it, but just never finished the rest of it for some reason. I could not tell you why. And for the past like several years, I'm like, I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna get to it. I just never did. But like, thanks to this podcast, I'm like, all right, now's the time. Doing it now. No more delays.
Actually, I say
Yeah.
I've only seen Psycho. That is, well, in terms of like watching the movie in full, that is true, but I was actually shown this movie in a film class. We only saw the opening, but it was just a way to teach us like how we can get so many details from characters from just a few seconds of screen time. Like we examine the rooms, like what they do, like what their routine is, stuff like that. And the opening is a great example of that because you see all the other tenants in the apartments just doing their daily activities. And then we get
True.
to Jeff's room, and then you get a glimpse of like what he does for an occupation and where he's at his life right now with the cast and the
And what
message
happened
written on the
exactly?
cast. Yeah.
Yeah, you see the broken camera, the image that he took. We're getting ahead of ourselves though. So let's actually get into this. What is Rear Window about? Well, it's about a photographer named L.B. Jeffries, also known as Jeff, and he recently broke his leg getting hit by a race car trying to get the perfect picture of it. So he is required to be bedridden for a few weeks. And with nothing to do, Jeff passes time by watching his neighbors from his apartment window, his rear window, if you will. But in doing so, Jeff starts noticing several unusual activities in one of his neighbors named Mr. Thorwald, including him wrapping knives in newspaper and leaving his apartment building several times in the middle of a rainy night. Not to mention that nobody has seen Mrs. Thorwald for days, and the fact that Mr. Thorwald had all of her clothes shipped away, there can only be one explanation. Mr. Thorwald has murdered his wife. At least, Jeff is convinced this is the case. So, Jeff, his girlfriend Lisa, his nurse Stella, and an officer named Thomas Doyle decide to try and get to the bottom of Mr. Thorwald's unusual behavior and the disappearance of his wife. So, I told you guys this was my first Hitchcock rodeo, and after finally sitting down to watch this movie, I gotta say, damn, this was fantastic.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
Could you
I
repeat that? Your
I definitely should have watched this much sooner. Like, I guess well to start anywhere, let's just address the cinematography and like the set design in this movie is like top notch. I absolutely love how basically every shot is from the perspective of the apartment. Like whenever you're looking into one of the other apartments, it's either just a wide shot or a big zoom in like it's from a telescope. It really does sell the illusion that we're getting this all from Jeff's perspective. Only that, but to complement the sound design for a second, I absolutely love how all the background music is completely diegetic. Like the piano player will actually be playing a piece in the middle of a scene, and that is actually the score accompanying it. Or somebody will play a record, and that is the music accompanying it. And it's all you hear it from a distance because again, it's all from the
It's
perspective of the
diegetic.
apartment. Yeah, I love it.
What I was really liked about Rear Window is so this was made during the Hays Code, so he could never like go that far. But what I always liked about Hitchcock is that he always liked to kind of explore kind of perverse material, but like and I always like pushed it just as far as he was allowed censorship. But yeah, like this movie is very clearly about like voyeurism. It's riffing kind of on that horror movie Peeping Tom. It was like and the whole thing is like there's kind of like this underlying sleazy element to it, even though like he is just actually Peeping Tom came out after. Okay, never mind. But yeah, there's this kind of underlying voyeurism element where like he is just watching out of for like the sake
Boredom
of this murder
initially.
thing. Yeah, boredom, and then for the sake of the murder. But like the fact he's seeing like I feel like a lot of his movies kind of equate sex and murder. So the fact that like he's saw a murder, and I think he also saw like a lady kind of like didn't he see like a lady kind of dancing with her like she was somewhat revealing at least for the time. It was
And
like
then she'd have some
Yeah,
people enter her apartment.
yeah. There's the
yeah
woman who's basically in her underwear.
yeah. So like a lot of I feel like he very much wants to kind of explore voyeurism there because and kind of
Not only that,
equates
but
sex with murder
there's
because
also the
voyeurism is a
woman on the
very
bottom
like
floor they nicknamed her Miss Lonely Hearts because she's lonely, and she actually manages to get somebody, but that turns into kind of an abusive relationship, and then she tries to OD herself, but then she hears the music from the piano player, and she's falls in love with him.
I kind of like how they kind of broke it up. Where it's like every kind of like apartment we see into has its own kind of different story.
Like like you said, what you said, Lugia, about how in that first scene you kind of get what you need to know to set up the characters. We get that with each of the tenets.
I also kind of like the dynamic with the Jimmy Stewart and his like lead because like she's like there's kind of like almost like a romantic flair to it, but like he's just like, oh well, there's a murder, we gotta watch the murder, and she's like, please just date me. Not really, but you know what I mean. Yes, yeah. I actually do think the kind of Grace Kelly and Jimmy Stewart dynamic is like it is pretty funny. Like they got like good banter,
Yeah,
and
this movie was funnier than I thought it would be.
Despite being about a murder.
Hmm.
yeah, and of
It's not
course,
a comedy, but it has a good amount of wit to it.
and then of course, I always really love the ending with like the camera because like that felt just like so unique to me. There's like great tension with the fact that he is like pretty much disabled. He can't really like run or anything, so he's like helpless, and he's just like kind of desperately trying to you know just slow down the attacker in any way he can.
By
It was like,
blinding him.
yeah, that
Yeah,
was
I
good.
thought that was a really cool
Yes.
scene. And we see from his perspective, like the screen going like red and orange, and he's trying to get his vision back, and he just keeps walking forward. That was a great source of tension.
It was also a great source of tension when he actually sent out Grace Kelly, and he was like, and he couldn't really communicate with her because this was before portable phones existed. So he's just
Hmm.
seeing her, and she's like, oh no, hide, hide, and then
And the lack of
And there's
music,
nothing
like
he
it's
could do
you're just.
too, because he's just wheelchair bound in his apartment.
Hmm.
yeah, it almost
Hmm.
like kind of like in a way like Jimmy Stewart was kind of like in the position like a lot of people were in like horror movies where they have to watch something horrible happening and they can't do anything. Like when you watch a horror movie, it's like turn around, the slasher's right behind you, that kind of thing. Jimmy Stewart was kind of in that situation. I was like, also it was interesting. Like I feel like Hitchcock movies are kind of interesting because he like often originated a lot of tropes that would be explored in horror movies that to come after, but he also like very much like almost kind of like commentated on said stuff that he would like later influence. He made the slasher with Psycho basically, and like this movie almost kind of feels like a sort of commentary on like how people kind of view slasher movies and stuff with like all the voyeurism, the sex and violence, the kind of helplessness. Very ahead of its time. Also forgot this was made in 1954. Yeah, I always like kind of joked about how like everyone's like idea of like the 50s is either Norman Rockwell paintings or like Pleasantville, and it's like it's not really either. It's just like people just kind of like lived in houses, but like everyone has this like either squeaky clean image or everything was like all seedy and not. It was like I feel like it probably hits more like the Hitchcock area where everything's like for the most part pretty neat and tidy, but there's a little bit of a perverse element going on.
I feel like me and Red have been doing most of the talking. Lugia, what do you have to add?
Well, to go back to the other tenants in the apartment, I thought it was really cool how we got to see all these little stories play out during the course of the main plot with obviously the piano man and Miss Lonely Heart, but also the woman and the dog and how that tied to the overall plot.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
There's that. I also like the mystery too, especially with what's his name, Doyle, the detective,
Yeah, Thomas Doyle.
because he is so adamant on Jeff basically being this crazy person who doesn't know what he's talking about. You almost think for a second he's in on this. He's in with Thorwald. But yeah, good mystery. Great characters. It was just a really fun watch. I don't have anything more to say really. Like this is like one of the trappings of like good movies like this, where like we like it, but we can't really like talk more about it aside from just some of the unique stuff that it does.
So one thing I actually looked up is that this movie, like, because I was thinking, it was like, about how the 50s, there was this kind of slow interest in more perverse elements, compared to, like, say, the 40s. And I was like, yeah, this movie came out 1 year after Playboy magazine started, which is just kind of I think puts a little bit in perspective, kind of historically, where America was at and like where the country was at when this was made. So, I think a lot of like the kind of voyeurism aspects, him watching a lady kind of in their underwear thing, that's where this kind of came from. Have you guys seen any Brian De Palma movies besides the one I showed you?
I
Aside from
don't believe
Blowout, I
so.
saw Scarface.
Okay, so you haven't seen the other ones. Okay. So you might have noticed this in kind of Blowout because that's one of the Hitchcockian type ones, but a lot of Brian De Palma movies are very much influenced by Hitchcock. And I mentioned how like I felt Hitchcock was kind of restrained by the Hays Code, and they kind of had like a lot of his stuff is basically like wants to explore sleazy stuff but can't go like as far as he probably wanted to because of the 50s. I always felt Brian De Palma in many ways kind of like further explored a lot of the things. So I would highly recommend. This is basically just me, just lead up for me giving a recommendation. But I'd highly recommend if you like Rear Window, check out the Brian De Palma movie Body Double because it's essentially Brian De Palma trying to mix Rear Window with Vertigo, but adding in a bunch of like 80s sleaze. And you can also watch Blowout because Blowout also has some voyeuristic elements, just more with audio than visual. We've already talked about Blowout. Did you guys see any parallels with this movie and Blowout? Since that's the one De Palma movie you've seen.
Yeah, but instead of audio, it's photography.
Yeah, basically. I'm just mentioning De Palma because De Palma is often basically considered Hitchcock's successor because he's the guy that kind of took what Hitchcock was doing and pushed it further because Hitchcock basically died when De Palma took over. Like if you actually watched the Hitchcock movie Frenzy, that was the only movie Hitchcock made like in the 70s before his health started failing. So it was basically like if you watch Frenzy and then you watch all of De Palma's movies, you can basically almost like see a direct line because like Frenzy got like a lot sleazier, and then so it's kind of interesting watching Frenzy and then watching like Obsession and then the later stuff.
I do have one more fun fact I neglected to mention, but this is pretty funny. So, the couple that throughout the movie they're just sleeping outside on their balcony?
Yeah.
Alfred Hitchcock decided to play a joke on them, and during the scene when it's raining and they bring in the mattress, he gave both of them different directions on how to pull or push the mattress. So, in the scene where they're trying to bring it in and they're like struggling with each other, that was completely like they had no idea that was going to happen.
Oh, that's funny.
But yes. And when the guy tripped into the apartment, Alfred was like, "All right, that's it. This is the take. We're using it. We're not doing it again."
I think Rear Window, I think a lot of people kind of consider Rear Window to be sort of the start of Hitchcock's golden age. Because I think this might have been one of his first color films. I need to double check that. Or at least it's one of like the first color films that like people really like held in high regard.
Yeah, because this was
Yeah.
1954, right?
hmm I think Rope might have been in color. I can't remember. Color film existed for a while, but like during the first like 2 decades of color film, people still did black and white stuff just because as an artistic choice, they just thought it was good.
Mhm.
Yes, Psycho came out 6 years after this movie, so
And
he just chose black and white just because he thought it worked better, and
and I
also
remember when
because
we did The Apartment, that one was also black and white, and wasn't that 1960?
Was?
yeah, the apartment came out after. Yeah, so you can tell because the apartment and Psycho they're done in like a widescreen format rather than the Academy ratio. Sorry, my headphones fell out. I moved.
Yes, Psycho, the
Yeah. So
movie where Alfred Hitchcock
a lot of
squeezed screams out of chocolate syrup.
So a lot of
Which, fun fact, I learned that it was chocolate syrup from Looney Tunes Back in Action.
But anyway, so yeah, like a lot of I guess classic black and white films were done in that 3:4 ratio that allow like the standard definition kind of TV ratio. It was called Academy ratio at the time. Yeah, once color kind of started getting popular right around the same time that widescreen started getting popular. People still sometimes did, the 4:3 ratio even after widescreen was a thing, or they sometimes still did black and white when the widescreen was a thing. So you got The Apartment, which is an anamorphic widescreen, but it's still black and white. And you got Psycho, which I think I might need to double check, but I think that might have also been a widescreen. I'm just double check. Yeah, that was also in widescreen. Yeah, so that's kind of how you can tell because color and widescreen kind of came out around the same time. I mean, there are some color stuff in Academy ratio, like some of the earlier ones, like A Matter of Life and Death. I think that's the first one off the top of my head. But I think that one came out like 1946, so it was Academy ratio and in full color. So a lot of interesting stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. I guess next time someone talks about how ideal the '50s were, remember that a bunch of sleazy noir and Hitchcock movies came out the same time, and Playboy. And if anyone ever says that the '50s was like I don't know, American Beauty, where everyone was like secretly iffy and stuff, it was like, yeah, not really, it's a mix of both. I feel like the '50s is like kind of a weird decade where everyone kind of views it through how like later generations viewed it rather than how it actually was because not many people watch movies made before 1970. I feel like most people's introduction to the '50s is either Back to the Future or Pleasantville, and that's kind of how people kind of view it, remember it.
And even then, that's like a modern interpretation of the 50s.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I
Like,
mean,
I don't think many people actually like are familiar with like the actual stuff made in the '50s. They're more familiar with like
I don't
how
know. Isn't like I Love Lucy the
people.
most watched TV show ever?
Is it?
How many
I think
people
so.
our age do you think watch I Love Lucy?
I don't know.
It's the
I
most watched
stumbled
TV
across
show
I Love
ever.
Lucy when I was 10 and I kind of binged it for like a week.
Well, we are weird people, all right? I watched Rear Window when I was 7. We are not normal. Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying like yeah, I Love Lucy is like the most watched show, but like it's most watched for like older people. I don't think like young people watch it. For young people, the most watched TV show is probably Friends or The Office. Anyway,
Do we
um
have anything else to add? Going back to, Rear Window, do we have anything else we want to say about it?
I don't think we talked about performances that much. I guess what'd you think about those?
Fantastic all around.
Yeah.
I really love like the kind of banter between Grace Kelly and Jimmy Stewart, and I kind of what I like about the Jimmy Stewart movies he did with Hitchcock is that Hitchcock very much like because obviously Jimmy Stewart's known for being
The Everyman.
he's It's a Wonderful Life guy. He's like
Yeah.
everyone's happy about him. But what I like is that he actually does a lot of Hitchcock movies they kind of play on this persona, but they do kind of give him a little bit of a dark streak. Vertigo is the biggest example where he's arguably a monster in Vertigo, but in here, they just give him like a little tweak of like a kind of a bad side with the fact he is spying on these people and he's kind of doing something he shouldn't be doing. So yeah, I was kind of liked how kind of
You
go
could
through
argue
all
that he's
the
just bored and he needs to find a way to pass time.
yeah I know, but he still watched a lady in undress, so.
True.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like a very slight thing. If you go through all the Jimmy Stewart movies he did with Alfred Hitchcock, I feel like each one gets like slightly more perverse, like with what Stewart's character. So like, by the time you get to Vertigo, like his character in Vertigo is like actively kind of like malicious. I think Vertigo was like 4 years after this. So yeah, same year as Alvin and the
Actually,
Chipmunks.
that is a discussion I do hear sometimes, and that is the morality of Jeff in this movie and whether or not he actually did the right thing. Because while it was actually a murder, he was spying on people, and it's none of his business. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Here's the thing. I always feel like Hitchcock likes to kind of explore the morally gray. So like, yes, this guy's doing something wrong by spying, but also it's a good thing he's stopping the murder,
Yeah, I think despite the fact that he was spying on people, he is just for his actions because like imagine if Thorwald
That
got
is that
away
is somewhat that is
and like
somewhat what I like
maybe more
about
murders happened in the future because of him. If he didn't speak
I mean,
up,
it
like
was a
that
crime
could
of
have
passion, but
ended for the worst.
I mean, I imagine it was a crime of passion. He's not a serial killer, but what I was thinking is I mentioned Body Double before. What I liked about Body Double, the guy who actually did the murder in Body Double, he was actually setting up the lead to sort of be his witness. So basically, the fact that the lead was voyeurism was sort of like he kind of fucked it up for himself because the fact that he basically gave the guy sort of an alibi. Um, Body Double is a kind of complicated plot, but I feel like it kind of plays some more interesting with kind of the morality of the voyeurism because his voyeurism is good, but at the same time, his voyeurism actually made the alibi stuff like a lot harder. To kind of solve the mystery. It's an interesting. Again, I recommend you watch Body Double. A lot more sleazy. It's straight up rated R. There's nudity in it, but Body Double's
What
a
year
good
did
movie.
that come out?
It came out in the 80s. It's the
Okay.
84, so exactly 30 years after this. You might have seen it. You know that band Frankie Goes to Hollywood? That song Relax? Relax, don't do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this movie has that song in there, and it's like kind of they're very much tied together.
Was it
I'm
written
pretty sure
for the movie or was it just used in the movie?
it was just used in the movie, but like
Okay.
I think it came out before the song got really big in the States because one of the music videos is straight up just a parody of the scene in Body Double. Yeah, but like the Frankie Goes to Hollywood sequence in Body Double is considered like one of its most famous sequences. You might have seen it, like is what I'm saying. Like if you've heard of Body Double, it's probably from that. I'm not sure which one I like actually more. If I like Rear Window or Body Double, I kind of like Rear Window like a little bit more, but I think filmically Body Double is a bit more interesting. But yeah, both I highly recommend. We already went through the score and how it's very diegetic. Went through.
Cinematography.
All right, so Lugia, you've seen Psycho, right?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if this is a hot take, but like, I think Hitchcock's black and white movies look a lot better than his color movies. This movie does look good. I'm not saying Rear Window or Vertigo looks bad, but like, Psycho looks better, right? Like, it's not just me.
I get it's been a while since I've seen Psycho, but I think I'll agree with you. But I think part of the reason why is because in Rear
Heavy
Window,
shadow.
we're basically in the same location throughout the whole duration of the film. Whereas with Psycho, it's a little more varied.
Well, actually, no, Psycho is also just in one location. It's a hotel.
Well, there's a few more. There's the hotel, there's the house, there's the church, there's the
Well,
highway.
is Psycho set in like just one room in the hotel?
No.
No,
Okay.
and the house is like kind of attached to the hotel. So, all right.
Again,
So,
I'll have to
I
see it
guess
again, but I think it looked a little better from my memory.
okay. Well, if you like Rear Window, definitely check out some of Hitchcock's other movies. Check out Body Double. Check out Blow Up, Blow Out, and check out Peeping Tom. Those are the kind of movies I'd recommend. Oh, and also apparently there's a Shia LaBeouf remake of Rear Window called Disturbia. I guess you can check that out. I haven't seen it, so I can't vouch for it, but I heard it was okay. I
And also
think
check out the Simpsons episode that's just a full parody of Rear Window.
yeah, that episode is called Bart of Darkness. I believe I saw that episode before I saw the movie, and I think my dad was like, "I should show this kid this movie," which is why I
Yeah,
saw
no,
it.
I saw the episode long before I
Okay,
saw the movie. And I actually rewatched it after I
we,
finished Rear Window just to see it again.
we already talked about it, but yeah, Blowout and the Conversation. Also check out Blow Up because we mentioned that Rear Window is just Blowout, but with photography. Blowout is a remake of a movie called Blow Up, which is just Blow Up with photography. I haven't seen Blow Up, but I imagine that it probably has some parallels with Rear Window. So
And another Triforce is completed.
We are on a
yes.
roll with these.
I finally glad I actually sat down to watch this one, and I greatly look forward to whatever I see next from Hitchcock. So, but
Yes,
yes,
I will. I
Red.
might potentially recommend another Hitchcock movie. Who knows?
Like right
We'll
now.
see.
I know.
No,
No,
not
no,
now.
not now, not now. I told you
Yeah.
guys it was for
Although,
me. I initially thought of the birds before I decided Rear Window. We'll get to the birds at some point. Can't say when though.
Alright.
yes. So I was kind of struggling trying to decide what movie I would pick for this week. So I guess here's interest. Okay, so I guess the three options are a western, which takes place in a very snowy setting rather than the desert. a Vietnam movie, but one that's more about doing illegal stuff in Vietnam rather than a Vietnam War movie. And another is this anime space film kind of exploring religion. Which three?
Question
Which one of them
is
sounds
the
more
snowy
interesting?
western movie The Hateful Eight?
No, it is not. It is
Ah,
this
okay.
movie did inspire the Hateful Eight, and no, this snowy western movie is made in the '60s, not by Sergio Leone, but one of Sergio Leone's friends. I believe very underrated director. You know what? I'll just tell you. Okay, great. The snowy one's called The Great Silence. It's by Sergio Corbucci, who is one of Sergio Leone's peers. He's not as famous as Leone, but I think he is about as good at his best. Corbucci made a lot more movies than Leone, so he's got a lot more of a spotty track record. Then the other one is Sorcerer by William Friedkin. We've briefly talked about Friedkin earlier because in a past episode when we did Exorcist 3 because he directed the first Exorcist, but don't think we've actually talked about Friedkin. So Corbucci and Friedkin, and then the last one was Royal Space Force, which is from the anime studio Gainax.
I'm thinking The Great Silence.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah, and
silence, back to westerns.
honestly, you guys getting me to talk about Great Silence got me kind of like being like, yeah, it's probably gonna be Great Silence. So yeah, Great Silence. You know what? We're right at the end of February. You know, so winter's gonna be ending soon. So a great time to watch the Great Silence. You know, right at the tail end of winter. So yeah, next week we watching the Great Silence. That is 1969 by director Sergio Corbucci. I'd recommend watching it subbed. I don't remember if it's subbed or dubbed, so I don't think it'll make a difference. But 1968 actually. All right, yeah. So this is kind of I guess if The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly or Once Upon a Time in the West is Sergio Leone's magnum opus, I would argue The Great Silence is Sergio Corbucci's magnum opus. So this is sort of the great spaghetti western that's not made by Sergio Leone. I guess you guys are finally going to see the other half of spaghetti westerns because I don't think many people actually watch many spaghetti westerns outside of Leone because Leone is probably one of the greatest directors of all time. So it's nothing like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. By the way, this is a much different film, but like you will see probably some parallels between this and Sholay and stuff like that
Okay.
because it's just kind of in that kind of same space. It's just this is about the snowy, harsh climates and stuff. You know, I always kind of like genre stuff that has a sort of twist on stuff. Like one of the reasons I like Game of Thrones is because instead of just regular medieval fantasy, a good chunk of it takes place in a snowy area, and I'm like, hell yeah!
I didn't know you watched Game of Thrones.
I read the books. I'm a big fan of George R. R. Martin.
I never knew that. Did you know that, Lugia?
No.
Yeah, no, I read all the books, and I watched the first 4 seasons of the TV show because I watched half of season 5, and I thought it was really bad, and then I looked it up, and I thought it was really bad. And I just figured that the show wasn't going to get good again. And from what I understand, I was right. So I made a good decision. I did not waste my
I
time.
have
Hell yeah.
I have never watched a single episode of Game of Thrones.
I'd
I
recommend the
remember
first
in
four
high school it
seasons.
was like all the rage.
I would recommend the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones. I still think they're worth a watch.
What's the
But I
season where
think
it gets
season
bad? Was it like season 8 or 9 where they had a
I know
Starbucks
the
guy?
ending. I know the ending is bad, but
no, there are 8 seasons in total. So basically, the first half is good, the second half is bad.
Oh, okay.
Some people like season 5 and 6 because like season 5 and 6 is like it didn't get terrible, but like it didn't get like 7 and 8 are terrible. Like I disagree with common consensus because I think season 5 is terrible. From what I understand, season 6 is a little bit better than season 5, so maybe that's why some people held out hope. You know, because like season 5 was bad, but season 6 was good. So maybe season 7 being bad would mean season 8 would be good. But nope, season 7 and 8 were both bad. So, and I don't think it's really worth. For what I understand, most people are like either stop at season 4 or stop at season 6. I stopped at season 4. I'm happy with that choice. What's really weird is season 4 ends at book 3, and there are 2 more books. So a lot of people are like, oh, you know, George R. R. Martin just finished those books, and I'm like, no, they had 2 books of material that they could have adapted and they went off it. That's their own fault. Also, book 3 was split into 2 seasons, so it's not even like oh, they had 2 more seasons. Like, no, they had like book 4 and 5 are much bigger than than the first 3 books. So like, they probably had like a good like 4 or 5 seasons in there, like a good like 5, 6 seasons in there. But instead, they decide to condense those 2 massive books into like 1.5 really shitty seasons, and then they just made up crap after. And it was like, I don't know what they were thinking. That was a real dumb idea. Anyway, Great Silence next week.
All right, so yes, next week is The Great Silence. This has been It's Always Sunny in Hollywood. I gotta go.
But when will I see you again?
Not for a long time. At least, not until we record the next episode.